My name is Ashley Flores, and this is my presentation on the role of family and personal life, the cult of domesticity, true womanhood. The role of family and personal life for women in 19th century America. Women in 19th century America had very limited roles. These roles were primarily wife, homemaker, and mother. Women were specifically raised to marry well or marry above their station. It was considered their duty and obligation to their family. Middle and upper class women were expected to stay home and run the household. Lower class families couldn't afford to live off of just one income, so many women and even their children in these families worked. Wage labor and the Industrial Revolution were very big factors at the time. Many women during the Industrial Revolution, and their children even, worked in the factories to support their families. This work for women was improper in society's eyes. To quote our book, factory operatives were outside the boundaries of acceptable womanhood because they lived and worked in what Godey's ladies' book called the banknote world, that only men were supposed to occupy. The cult of domesticity / true womanhood. The ideology of the cult of domesticity became popular around the 1820 to 1860 year marks. Mainly this applied to middle class, upper class white families who were newly wealthy. The cult of domesticity was supposed to cultivate purity, submissiveness, piety, and domesticity in all things as it applied to the wife or the mother in the house. These were considered her sacred duties, so they were God-given duties, something that she did to honor God and to honor her family. Their job was to make the home a place of happiness, health, and virtue. In contrast to the categories of labor and politics, which have been recognized in all narratives of the nation's past, women's historians took the lead in bringing family and personal life into the mainstream of American society. Also, Godey's Ladies book was a magazine that was published around this time, and by 1850 it had 40,000 subscribers. It was the premier magazine for wives at the time, middle upper class wives. It was focused on the domestic sphere of women. It was recipes, ads for household items, pictures of the latest fashions, illustrations promoting the feminine ideal of selflessness, purity, and subtle maternal influence. Industrial Revolution and the cult of domesticity. Women of all classes were being held to a standard by society that was impossible for the majority of women in the 19th century. Lower class families could not afford to have a wife who was dependent on only the man's salary. Some families even worked together in the factories, as shown in the picture here. Even the children worked. It was thought that their small, nimble fingers were good for getting into those little tight crevices in between the spools of thread and whatnot. The wage-earning world was seen as a man's domain. So even though that the women were working and they were working really long and hard hours, and many of them had families, they still weren't paid anywhere close to what the men were paid. The legacy in my life today. The role of family and personal life has changed drastically from 19th century to now. Women fighting for a better education for themselves so that they had more opportunities has changed our world into what it is today. I am a single mother of a little boy and I work full-time and go to college. This any of these things would have been impossible in the 19th century. Women were forced to stay in unhealthy and dangerous relationships. Thankfully, today that is not the case. While I'm definitely not an example of the cult of domesticity, as I'm not married and I do work outside the home, I do appreciate what strengths I can draw from it. I think it really taught women to value their time with their children, and it really focused on making women the primary caregivers, something that I really feel is something that we still do today. Many things have changed in order to make my lifestyle possible, but I have a lot of respect for the strong women and mothers who sacrificed along the way to give me the opportunities that they never had.